Lisa Costello, and I'm the gallery director here at Parkland College. Thank you for joining us on such a wonderful, beautiful evening. I love it tonight. I feel like it's spring. This is our final art and design faculty lecture. And again, I'm Lisa Costello, and I'm the gallery director here at Parkland College. I'm delighted to have Kelly White with us today to talk about her own work. Many people know Kelly White as the executive director of 40 North, which is Champaign County's Arts Council, or as an art history instructor at Parkland College. She's taught here for quite a few years. What some people don't know is what a talented artist she is. And so today she's going to share her work and talk about her passion for art history and her love of art. She's one of the rare gems that promotes the arts as well as creates it. So I'm delighted to have her here today with me. Before we get started, I'd like to thank our donors and the Gertz Gallery Advisory Board. I'd also like to thank Parkland College administration for their support as well. And I'd also like to thank Donna Gertz, for whom the gallery is named, and of course her husband, Fred. I would be remiss to not mention how thankful we are to the Illinois Arts Council, a state agency, for their program support that we receive typically every year through grant funding. It really makes a difference in our programming and our ability to bring artists to our community. So I'd like to definitely thank them as well. So without further ado, I would like to hand it over to Kelly. She's so terrific, and it's great to have her as a colleague and be able to listen to her talk about her work. So without further ado, I'm gonna hand it over to you, Kelly.
Thank you, Lisa. And I definitely want to thank you a lot for putting this together, because obviously, you know, one of my favorite things every year was the faculty show, and you've done an amazing job of featuring faculty and doing all these talks, which I've greatly enjoyed. And thanks to Cindy and anybody else, you know, helping with the tech stuff. It's been
yeah, we couldn't do it without Cindy Smith, our tech help.
So yeah, thank you so much for that, and Gertz Gallery and Parkland and everything. So I want to start off with just a couple of things. First of all, prepared for it to be awkward, everybody, because I'm literally talking to myself right now. So when I teach or ever give a presentation, I love to see people and smiles and nods and faces, and this just feels super weird because I'm just talking to myself in my house. So I would love it if you all just nodded anyway. I can't see you, but nod before me and laugh at me, with me, whatever. It'll just make me feel better if I think people are out there nodding and laughing and enjoying it, because it's just really weird not to be able to see the faces. And then the other thing is I'm also humbled to be put with the group that have presented. I've watched them all and been very impressed. And probably the main thing that made me realize is that I think all artists have responded very differently to COVID. And the main thing I have struggled with is I haven't painted. I did not complete a painting in 2020. And I'll admit it, but it was a struggle. I tried for sure. And, but it didn't work out. And when I see stuff like Joan's work and Paula's work, I mean, they just focus on a new series they've been working on, and it was just amazing and inspiring to see. So I'm hoping it's going to come back and I can start painting, even though I'm the slowest painter probably in Champaign County. But yeah. So anyway, so I'm just going to go over some of this stuff is not new, but I've kind of grouped it into kind of stuff that relates more to art history, and then some figures and portraits. Hopefully you guys all find it pretty interesting. And then also I should mention the art history side is very cool because I've seen myself as an artist. I've painted and drawn since the get-go, but I discovered art history in college and never looked back. And what was interesting is when I went to grad school, I was the only, and I got a master's in painting and a master's in art history. And I was the only art history student that painted, and I was one of the only painters that actually was obsessed with art history. So it was always very interesting to me that that was rare, because it just seemed to fit perfectly for me. It impacts both go back and forth all the time. So speaking of that, I'm going to go ahead and start to show you some stuff. So hopefully you're seeing my screen. I assume someone will tell me if you're not, but so this is, I just thought this would be a good way to start out with the whole art history angle. This is a reproduction I did. I recreated, this is painted by Caravaggio. He's one of my absolute favorites. And this is St. Jerome. And what I tried to do, I actually gave this to my parents, and they have it hanging in their house. It doesn't match their house at all, but they hung it, which is awesome. And what I tried to do here is I made it the exact same size as the original, which is in the Borghese Gallery. I actually got to see the original when I went to Italy a few years ago, which was great. But I even tried to only use pigments that would have been available to Caravaggio instead of gessoing the canvas like a painter would typically do. I even used rabbit skin glue, which was kind of gross. I had to kind of boil it, and it was weird, but that's how I primed and sealed the canvas. So I really tried to use the materials and techniques of Caravaggio to really kind of try to link myself to what possibly it felt like. And it was a really great learning experience. It's not great, but I did really enjoy the process, and that I like it because it does kind of tie the painting with the art history. And even in my art history classes now, if I can, I try to assign something like this or recreate something from a great master. And some kids really love it. Some kids, it challenges them a lot, but I think no matter what, you learn a ton. The other thing I want to mention, this is just kind of an overall collection. A lot of the figure paintings and some of the allegories and mythological paintings I do, I discovered these kind of old risque postcards. I think I got a pack of them once, like in an antique store, and then I've kind of since collected them digitally online if I can find them. And they're mostly from the late 19th century and early 20th century, huge range. They obviously were considered very risque back in the day. But what I really enjoy, a lot of the poses, it's just a really great resource to have. And what I try to do is I come up with the painting. I'll show you an example of this. I come up with like the topic or the theme or the allegory or the myth that I want to paint. And then I search through all these images and trying to find and match a body type or a specific pose that I enjoy, that I feel like would kind of work. And then the other aspect that I've talked about before is a lot of these ladies, some of them were quite well known and posed for a lot of different photographers. They also posed for the painters at the time. So it feels very interesting to actually maybe be using some of the same models that some of the painters in the 19th century were also using, while also kind of using the same subject matter, but modernizing it. So I just wanted to show you that as an example of what some of these cards, they're just all little postcards, what they look like. So yeah, this is a good first example. I love mythology a lot. And so this one I had chosen to paint, which is the myth of Persephone. If you guys don't know Persephone, it's pretty cool. I'll give you a very brief background. So she's the daughter of Zeus, and then her mother is Demeter, who's actually the goddess of agriculture. And one day she was actually out gathering flowers, not doing anything wrong. And the god of the underworld, Hades, basically seized her and took her down into the underworld without her saying yes, and not anybody else knowing. Obviously, the mom, super devastated, freaking out, and just lets go of all of her responsibilities as far as harvests and fruitfulness. And so a famine ensues and everything's going terrible. So Zeus feels like, crap, I'm going to have to intervene here. So he goes down into the underworld and talks to Hades, and he's like, buddy, we got crazy stuff going on up there because you stole Demeter's daughter. And so they wheeled and dealed, and in the end, unfortunately, he wouldn't give her back completely because she had eaten some pomegranate seeds in the underworld. And so they negotiated, and because of those 4 seeds, Hades then agrees that he will keep Persephone in the underworld for 4 months out of the year. So you can imagine that when Demeter, her mom, every year she has to go back down to the underworld, she goes into mourning. And basically that's when winter comes, right? Because she lets go of all of her responsibility. Everything goes barren and dies, and she goes into mourning. And then 4 months later, when Persephone can rejoin, then spring comes and everything starts to grow back again. So kind of a cool way of seeing the shift in the seasons. So this is an example of a 19th century painting by the very famous Pre-Raphaelite Dante Gabriel Rossetti, a painting of Persephone holding her pomegranate there. That's kind of the main symbol. He did it, I think, like 8 times. He was pretty obsessed. He was also obsessed with this model that's in the painting. But so I just wanted to kind of give you an example of like a 19th century version. And then, of course, this is my version. And so I wanted to kind of, slim it down to just the necessary part. So this is actually my friend Lisa. this will come up a few times tonight. It is weird to ask people to pose for you. Some people are super pumped and super flattered. Some people are basically weirded out and don't look you in the eye afterwards. So, but luckily, I always had told her how much I loved her profile. And finally, she did agree that she would pose for me. So, go to the grocery store, pick up a nice pomegranate. And then I do really like to work from my own photographs. So obviously did a little photo shoot and obviously stripped it down. There's no real setting at all, complete background with lots of negative space. I tend to like a lot of open negative space. And then obviously her beautiful profile and shoulder, and then the hand kind of holding the symbol of the pomegranate there for you to kind of reference it back to the whole concept of Persephone. All right. Okay, so another one, similar theme. This is kind of my theme of myth. So this is Ariadne on the island of Naxos. Always kind of was intrigued by this story. Once again, I'm showing you another example. 19th century John Vanderlyn. He was an American painter. I think this painting is known for being possibly one of the first nudes to be displayed in America. Don't quote me. I guess this is going to be recorded, so that sucks. But yeah, don't quote me that I said that. But something like that. So real quick, once again, what happens is Ariadne is the daughter of King Minos of Crete. And basically on Crete, they had this thing called the Minotaur. If you guys have heard of the Minotaur, half bull, half man. Nobody could kill him. Everybody who went into the labyrinth where he stayed never survived. And of course, a guy wanted to go in. I can't think of his name. It's not Perseus, is it? Something, I think it's with a P. Wanted to go in and kill him. And she helped him by giving him thread that then he would unravel as he was going into the labyrinth, because everybody would get lost in the labyrinth and get killed. But she didn't. She saved them. They fell in love. He killed the Minotaur, was super famous. Then he took her to this island of Naxos. And can you believe it? When she fell asleep, he took off. And usually in these paintings of Ariadne, there's always like a little ship or a little boat that basically is showing him leaving her high and dry and ditching her while she's sleeping on the island. I didn't include that, but I basically kind of wanted to include her there sleeping in the idea of her being on an island. It doesn't end badly, though, because eventually Dionysus, who's the god of wine, lands on this island and falls in love with her, and they're together forever. So it ends well for her, but she did get ditched and stood up and ghosted on an island after she basically helped him kill the Minotaur and get a lot of fame. So, all right. So another one, this is Pandora's Box. This is one of my favorite paintings, actually. Usually I start, after a little while, I no longer like my paintings, but this one's held on for me for some reason. So I think a lot of people know Pandora's Box. It had, it's a box. It was something to do with Zeus battling somebody else, Prometheus, and he made this box, had someone make this box, and it was full of all the misery and the evil in the world, but forgot to kind of send along a warning to not ever open it. And so Pandora opened it and let out all the evils of the world. And I think closed it, and the only thing left inside was hope. So on the left there, another Pre-Raphaelite that I love, John William Waterhouse, is a version of Pandora's Box, her sneaking a little peek into the box. And this is where one of those times where I really wanted to do Pandora's Box, but in a very subtle way, right? So I'm looking through all the images of a lot of those postcards. And this is actually a standing nude, but I just really loved her back. And then just this hand resting on, I think it actually is a door or something in the original picture. But I just liked how it very subtly just gave a hint that it's a box. And then she almost looks like she's maybe looking over her shoulder, listening or waiting, almost like where maybe she almost knows that she's doing something she shouldn't. And that it's kind of foreboding, because obviously it's going to be really bad when that box is opened. One of my favorites. And then once again, I think I mentioned before, lots of big open negative space, which I really like. Some people, it unsettles them. For some reason, I dig it. I wonder if I'm going too fast. If I'm talking too fast, it's just how it has to be. I just can't help it. This one is called Fate. And I keep saying, like, I started a series of this. I've begun a series of this. None of these series ever get finished, but that's okay. But I have been obsessed with Fate and the fates. I'm kind of obsessed with definitely obsessed with death in general. And so the fates are very fascinating to me. On the left here, you see a version of the fates. I think they're collecting the stars or something. And that's by Elihu Vedder from 1919, one of my favorites. And so there's three fates technically, the Morai, and there's three of them, which is why I originally was going to do a series of three, like a triptych of each of the fates. It can still happen. I go back and forth. So there's three, I believe, like Clotho is the first one. She's considered to be the spinner, right? So she's spinning the thread of life, getting it ready to go, right? Getting it ready, spinning that thread. And then there's, I think, Lachesis, and I think she is considered to be the measurer. So she's kind of measuring it out and allotting time for you in your lifetime. And then the third one, which is basically probably the one I technically painted there, is Atropos, who is basically the cutter. You know, she's the bad one. She is the one. She decides your manner of death. Obviously decides when the time is coming, and so she's usually always held. You can even see their shears there in the Vedder painting too. I actually ordered those shears because when I wanted to do this painting, I was obsessed with the shears. I didn't want to be like, oh, here are my cute little scissors from Staples. No, I wanted them to be shears. So I found those old shears on eBay and ordered them. So I was thrilled because I really wanted that. I really wanted to have what looked like those kind of shears for the impact. So I hope to do three again, but obviously that's the most important one. And I really like the idea. This is actually my friend Jessie posted for this for me. And I really like the concept of her holding the shears behind her back, just because we're seeing the shears. But technically, when it's kind of a secret. You obviously don't know your manner of death. You don't know when the time is coming. You don't know when she's going to decide to pull those shears out and end your life, cut that thread for the final time. So I probably will go back to this topic forever. The fates really intrigued me, and the three different people represented. There's other different stories that come along, and some of them are a little bit different, but in general, that's the basis. But yeah, fate will always be something I return to. Okay. All right, so those were kind of my mythological ones. So as an art historian, teaching art for a very long time, I had a dream to always visit Italy. Luckily, a few years ago, dream come true. Went with my best friend Janet, and she was very tolerant of the fact that I had basically decided we have to see every piece of art I've ever heard of before. So I had a strict spreadsheet for every city we entered. I had our spreadsheet of art we had to try and see. We managed to see a lot of it, actually. It was pretty impressive how much art we were able to see. And obviously, one of the places I wanted to go was Rome. And obviously, I wanted to go to the Vatican. And many, many things. I wanted to see the Vatican, but I wanted to see the Laocoon, which is the very famous statue there on the left. I think Lisa on the email today shared a cool video about it. It's incredibly well known. Any art history student, anybody has had to study the Laocoon. Michelangelo loved it just because of the form of the figure there. It's amazing sculpture. And there's definitely lots of plaster casts, but I was thrilled to be able to see the real one, the original, at the Vatican. And so I went ahead and took about 1 million pictures of it from every angle I could imagine. And so when I got home, another series that I started was a lot of paintings of different amazing sculptures and things that I had seen in Italy. So on the right there, you see one of the detailed photographs that I took of the Laocoon. I've got several more, but I really liked that image because I've always been obsessed with just the way that the body has been handled with marble. It's a very tragic image. I guess I should talk about the story a little bit. It's the priest Laocoon, and if anybody knows about the Trojan War, he was desperately trying to warn them. He was definitely trying to warn the Trojans when the Trojan horse came along. You guys, it's a trick, it's a trick, it's a trick. Do not accept that gift of the Trojan horse. Unfortunately, they didn't believe him, and they brought the horse inside. If you guys know the story, there's a whole bunch of Greek soldiers inside, and they defeat them. And of course, one of the gods was on the Greek side, so he was really mad that Laocoon had tried to, he didn't work, but he had tried to stop it from happening. And he sent this giant serpent to take down Laocoon and his two sons, who are the two figures on either side. So obviously it's tragic. Got this swirling serpent going around. It's biting him. His face is in agony. But it's just a beautifully done sculpture. And it's also just been, just a part of my world for so long in art history. So it was great to see it. And then I wanted to capture it in paint as well. And then similar to that, once again, in Florence, so many beautiful pieces of art. And there was obviously this John Bologna sculpture, which is Hercules battling the centaur Nessos. Awesome sculpture. And so I've there painted, took a million pictures of that too, all different angles. On the right there, you see my painting of just basically Hercules' intense face. But yeah, it's very cool. If you don't know about Hercules, he's obviously, what happens with, like, why Nessos is so critical is that he was hitting on Hercules' wife, and Hercules was across the river and saw that happen and was very upset. So I think he shot an arrow, and it hit Nessos. But before Nessos died, he gave his cloak filled with his blood to Hercules' wife and said, "Oh, by the way, if you keep this on hand, because this blood is magic and it will keep Hercules' true love forever." She believed it, not a good idea. And so at some point when her trust in Hercules begins to wane, she gets the cloak out, not realizing it's poisoned, and it ends up killing Hercules. So it's interesting, you see this battle here, but in the end, the centaur will defeat Hercules with the little trick he did with the cloak of blood. Hercules obviously then is made into a god. He's a part god, part human, and they basically welcome into the gods in the end because he does so many amazing feats. But yeah, beautiful sculpture, and just wanted to capture one part of it. I probably have, I don't know, several more I want to do because I really enjoyed it and kind of capturing the feeling of being in Italy. So that series will also continue. Don't hold me to it, but I will. I promise. I'm going to keep doing them. Okay. So then I just want to show you a few figures. This actually is a commission. So I had done some figurative work, and then someone said they wanted one, a reclining nude. So this is also one of those that I found the model for it from one of those postcards, and basically got rid of everything else in the image to kind of make it very stark with just a lot of negative space. A lot of times with these, what I like about it too is I really limit the palette. They're all oil on canvas. I love oil. I really I can handle a little bit of acrylic every now and then, but I think once you get used to oil and the workability and just the translucency you can get, and I just can't go back. So I do love oil, and I even love, the smell of it. I just love everything about oil paint. This is a very limited palette. It's mostly just Van Dyke Brown and unbleached titanium, and then a little bit of regular titanium white, but it's really kind of nice to really limit the palette. So very enjoyable. It's pretty big. I can't remember how big this one is, but so that was a commissioned piece. And then this one was cool. So obviously I like to use those postcards, but a lot of times the reason I use the postcards is because it is very difficult to find someone to pose, especially for a figure painting. But I did have a friend that did agree. And so, because I'd love to paint from life, but I'm a slow painter. It would take forever. I've loved doing figure painting and figure drawing in classes, which has been awesome. So, but I asked my friend and she agreed to pose. It was awkward at first. Took quite a few pictures. And then at some point, I think something fell on the floor near my tripod. I can't quite remember. And then I can't remember how it worked, but somehow she was looking over and said, "What is that over there?" And she kind of relaxed herself, and I took a picture as she was kind of looking at whatever fell. And funnily enough, of all the pictures, this was by far the best one. I think it was because she wasn't posing anymore. She kind of forgot she was posing, and she just kind of relaxed and was concentrating. And so, and just the way her hand was resting there, it just was so lovely. Her skin is just phenomenal. So yeah. And then a lot of people, I didn't mean it, but some people, that kind of weird shadow there coming off her shoulder, some people kind of see that as almost like a symbolic wing of some kind. I didn't intend it, but that's cool. But yeah, so would love to do more of people that I know and photograph and paint, but it can be a challenge to get a model. And then this one, similar, wanted to, so this one is called, it's a long title, When I Have Fears That I May Cease to Be. I'm not going to read the poem. It's the title of a John Keats poem. It's not very long. I thought about reading it, but I don't do well at reading poetry. I don't want to destroy it when I try to read it out loud. But back to the whole death obsessed thing. I think that poem has always, I don't know, stuck with me. It's basically pondering when you are going to cease to be and what you're not going to be able to do. I think he talks about not being able to outline I don't know. It's very moving to me, that poem. And so I've probably tried to paint that. I've used that title on several different paintings. I probably will still keep going. I don't know quite how this really connects to it other than just the pose. And once again, the very even more stark background. She's sitting on a little stool, and I even took the stool away. But just more this kind of pensive, just kind of deep in kind of deep in thought and pondering your own mortality, which I do a lot, have ever since I was a little kid. And so I'll probably keep kind of painting that subject matter a bit. I haven't quite gotten to the point where I really feel like it works perfectly and it really embraces my feelings, but that's probably why I'll just keep doing it. It's one of those ones that you'll keep trying, because I don't know if I ever will be able to really fully show what I want to show and mean what I mean. I've called things void before, which is kind of another version of death stuff, but yeah. So anyway, I enjoyed how it turned out for sure. Like I said, I don't know if it really means what I want it to mean if people look at it, but I enjoyed painting it a lot. Just as an aside, technically, I did for the first time here in a long time is I made a colored ground. So if anybody paints or anything, a lot of people, you have a white painting, white canvas with gesso on it. And a lot of times I just start with that, and then I just start laying things in and start to put down some darks and start to get the general figure or the portrait in. And then this one, I took this gray and I actually made a fully colored ground and started that way. And it was interesting. I will definitely do it again. It kind of is that same version where you kind of start with a mid-tone, and so then you can add darks and add lights. But yeah, I think I really enjoyed it. So I need to do it a little bit more often, but I did kind of like starting out with a colored ground versus starting out with that stark white canvas, which can be a little intimidating anyway. See, this feels so weird. I'm just talking forever, and I know it's only half an hour, but this feels so weird. Hopefully you guys are still there. Okay. So then I'll end with a few portraits. I really love doing portraits. I do, but I do not do teeth. If you guys try and paint teeth, I mean, I was so fascinated with Joan's paintings because she had a lot of teeth, and she even talked about the different colors of the teeth and the fake teeth versus the real teeth. But boy, when I've done paintings with teeth, it is not good. So when people have asked me to do portraits, I have definitely made it real clear. I will do your portrait, but guess what? Nobody's smiling. I don't want any smiles. So this is actually my friend Petra, who lives in Savannah. That's where I went to grad school, was the Savannah College of Art and Design. And so this is actually in her living room, and she's Swedish and just had a stunning face, I always felt. And luckily her husband was an artist. So when I asked her, hey, do you mind if I paint you? Is that cool? She was totally on board because of course he'd painted her before. So it was no big deal for her. So really enjoyed painting this one. I was really starting to try to break up the form. I do have a problem. You'll even see it on the last painting. I tend to try to finish paintings too much. I try to overblend versus like the whole economy of stroke, where you really just try to lay down the brush strokes that you need that really gets across. Like if anybody knows, John Singer Sargent was really into that economy of stroke, instead of just trying to blend constantly. And I am a blender. Sometimes you just can't deny it. But in here, I was really trying and enjoying breaking up the planes of her face and really trying to put in some bigger brush strokes and leave them alone instead of obsess over them and shade them and and soften them. I was trying to like leave those brush strokes in as a way to really challenge myself. So I have a companion portrait of her husband that kind of goes side by side. It looks pretty cool. But yeah, it shows her intensity. She's an intense person, and I think it captures her. I think that was I was proud. I think it captured her personality. And then this is actually was a commission based on some of my portraits and different paintings. A good friend of mine, Jan Trout, asked me if I could paint her daughter, Anna, who is a stunner. And so luckily we could do a photo shoot. Because like I said, people sometimes come to me and say, here's a photo, can you paint it? It can be done, but I really, really like to control the process from beginning to end and really take my own photographs so I can really control the quality and the lighting and the composition. And so we kind of snuck out. This was a secret gift for somebody. So we kind of had to sneak out to do a little photo shoot. And once again, it was kind of funny even taking the picture because you could tell she felt awkward. It's like I'm posing for a painting. And it just felt weird. So took a million pictures just to kind of relax. And then eventually I think she took her hair down, and then we kind of laughed a little bit. And then she got kind of mad at her mom about a couple of things. And then eventually, whether it was a noise or a car drove by or something, you get that moment where they stop posing and they just kind of relax, and you're able to kind of capture that that pose that really is them versus them trying to pose. And really enjoyed. She always has beautiful eye color. Loved doing that, and the hair. And then kind of decided to really embrace the lens flares there, the lens things happening in the background of the trees, and just loved that green a lot. So I was really, really happy with this. It's one of my favorite paintings, definitely one of my favorite commissions. And really, and I think it does capture Anna for sure. And then lastly, I did this painting, this one. So this is kind of interesting because at 40 North, which I haven't talked about at all, the Champaign County Arts Council, which is my job. One of my duties, well, when it's not COVID anyway, is Friday Night Live, which is a performance program that I run in the summertime where you have musicians playing in 4 street corners in downtown Champaign. And I photograph them because obviously working at a nonprofit, one of the most critical things you do is document, whether it's for grants, whether it's for future marketing, you have to document stuff. So every Friday, I'm out there not only kind of making sure that things are happening and people are getting paid, but also to document, getting images, getting video, documenting what's happening. And this was one of the performers, Mary, who performed with, this was a duo, Zach and Mary. And I was just completely taken with the structure of her face and her interestingly colored hair. And usually I'll take a few at each corner and then move on. And I found myself just taking so many photographs of her because I just couldn't believe every angle, a lot of times when you take pictures of people singing, they're pretty funny. Some of them can look pretty awkward because they have to distort their face in certain ways. And she just never, it just looked completely natural every time I took a picture of her. And so as I was looking through the pictures and processing them, I got the feeling, because that happens to me sometimes. I'll see a photo and I'm like, I want to paint that. I want to paint it. And so I really did. So I didn't want to just do it without her permission. So I tracked her down and once again had the awkward conversation of, do you mind if I paint your portrait? And she was thrilled. She was very, very excited. And so I went ahead and went through with it and was very happy with how it turned out. And then what was really cool is it was at the last faculty show, actually, and she was able to come and see it and be able to be beside the painting and see her portrait. So that was really kind of wonderful to be able to share it with her and made a new friend out of it, which was really nice. So I definitely will probably add to this kind of series as well. So as you can see, and that I'm not even covering all of them. There's lots of series that I never finish, and to some people that know me well, that's not at all surprising. So, but working at 40 North can be, it's challenging. It's definitely decreased my painting because, as Lisa mentioned, a lot of my job is focusing on other creatives and other amazing artists, and so it does take a back seat. And I hope trying to get it to the point where it's a little bit more balanced, because I do love it. When I get into the studio and do it, I love it. It's just really having to make it a bigger priority in my life. So hoping to do that now that we can get COVID behind us somewhat, and get back to finishing some of these series, finishing some commissions that people haven't gotten yet, which is terrible. So anyway, and so this has been great. I hope people have enjoyed it. I've had an interesting experience with painting because for a long time I worked at Verde Gallery, which was in downtown Champaign. Actually, it's the same place, the building I work in now. But anyway, and I would have paintings on display there, but I also worked there. And it is one of the best experiences I've ever had because the people who visited the gallery did not know the person sitting at the table had paintings up. And so for an artist to hear unfiltered commentary on their art, it was very, very good learning experience, very humbling. I don't think many artists get that. A lot of artists, they get people that tell them, oh, I love your stuff, which is great. But it was, for me, I got the unfiltered version. I got to find out, how people really felt about things. And it really kind of made me understand that not everybody's going to love everything. And I don't know, it created a detachment between me and my work that has been very helpful. I'm not in love with it. And I think that helps. So, okay, I'm starting to ramble. So Lise, I guess I'm wrapping up if you want to help me stop talking.
No, not at all. What a beautiful PowerPoint. I loved seeing all of your work. Just amazing. We do have some questions here, but I have one that are comment, observation, question, or something that I think is interesting to address. Since we have so many students in the audience, I'm always thinking about what is a great thing that they can take from the talk. And I think it's really always fascinating when you start realizing that artists are not always just working in a vacuum, or there's kind of maybe a stereotype of the crazy artist working in their studio, reclusive and whatnot. And, it's interesting when I see your work and you show us, the specific paintings and then talk about your interpretation, how you've taken those same stories that are kind of well known in certain circles, and really talk about those themes and how you capture in your own visual words or terms that the actual just like what you're trying to capture from it. You simplify it, and you talked a little bit about that with the idea of reducing color. So you might be looking at an old master painting, but you're still making it your own. Can you maybe elaborate a little bit more about that? I mean, in my notes I kind of wrote down, with the use of strong lighting, you're still referencing some of those painters with the chiaroscuro and the strong lighting, but they're definitely much more contemporary and of this time. Can you talk a little bit about that? Are you is that what you're influenced by, or what do you think, like, how do you do that? How do you extract those elements that you want to include in your work?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good call, because I should have mentioned that. Yeah, I would definitely, I showed the Caravaggio at the beginning, but I'm definitely highly influenced by the Baroque and that real strong, contrast of the deep, deep shadows and the bright light. I don't know. I think it's typical for a lot of people to like high contrast. It pulls you in. Right.
Yeah.
I guess the other thing that I do, my background's also in graphic design. My undergrad is in graphic design. And so sometimes I think when I'm doing the large negative space or the simplifying it down, it's almost adding a design aspect to it in a way.
Interesting.
Some of the design thoughts come into my head when I'm doing when I'm working on the composition. And then probably the simplifying down, I also have forced on myself because I tend to be way too literal. Like I will be feeling a feeling, right? Like something I'm really processing and dealing with, like a lot of stuff with COVID. And I tend to go so literal, like, oh, I know, I'll paint a picture of time. I mean, it's pathetic how literal I am. And then I'll see how someone else does it. And it's there, but it's all intermixed and you can pull out what you want. And it's not just like smash in your face. And so I think sometimes I started doing that simplification because otherwise I was just going to pile it all on. I mean, I had one from grad school. It was so sad. It was something about future and past. Like I was showing myself kind of because I tend to always like to think about past, and I'm terrified of the future. I mean, literally, it was me looking forward and being scared and looking back. And I mean, it was so pathetic. I'm like, can't you come up with another way to show that than literally looking forward and back? So I think sometimes that simplification is me forcing myself, like, let's try and be a little more subtle, lady, instead of having to pile all the crap.
Yeah. And then the other thing is, I think sometimes people aren't aware of, like jazz music. Like I remember the first time my dad loved jazz, and so I would listen to it with him. And I remember hearing another jazz musician playing something that I was very familiar with from another musician. And I was like, what is that? They're imitating it or whatever. But really they were putting, my dad had to roll his eyes and explain to me, what it was all about. It wasn't just about that one unique piece and I think that way about painting too, like when you are talking about, your different works and you see these other classical sculptures, I mean, you're kind of taking something and editing it down and doing all of these other things to make it kind of come to life right now. So I think that's really exciting. And I just think I wanted to point that out because sometimes that's overlooked. Okay, let me see. I'm going to ask you some questions here. Laura O'Donnell asked, she teaches here at Parkland too. It is interesting that Rossetti's Persephone holds the pomegranate curled in toward her as if she is protecting it, reserving it for herself, whereas your Persephone is holding it extended away from her as if she is offering it to the viewer. Is this a conscientious decision that you made to have your Persephone having a giving gesture rather than a holding one?
That's so, you can tell Laura's an art historian through and through with that question. That is awesome. I would love to say like, yes, but I think mostly what my intention is to make it seem very much like it was a symbol, like okay. Here is my friend Lisa, and then she's just balancing this little pomegranate. Yeah. So instead of really tying it into the story, I was literally just using that purely as a pomegranate to tie it into Persephone versus having the action actually mean something. Does that make sense? Almost like she's holding it out to you, like, look, here's my symbol. Does that make sense?
Right. Yeah.
Like it's kind of making fun of the whole idea that we have allegories that have these, or different gods. You're like, oh, if they have this, it's Zeus. If they have that, it's that. It's like it's her little symbol that she's presenting to us. Like, here's my symbol. Yeah.
Oh, okay, great. And then another person, I think it's Ruta, asked, what is the size of the reclining nude?
I feel like it's like maybe 2.5 by 5 feet, I think.
Okay.
I wouldn't say it's actual size, but it's pretty big. Okay.
And what do you determine the size specs of your own paintings? How do you? That was Jeff asked that question. How do you determine the size?
See, that's very cool. I didn't go into that because I have a range. I kind of have my little sweet spot, which tends to be, let's say, 2 feet by 4 feet. But then I didn't show it tonight, but I have a really big painting called Whisper. It's huge, and so huge that I was dumb enough to stretch it in my house and then realize I can't fit it in my car, so I can't take it anywhere. But I love painting that big. I have to say, it was a portrait. And when I talked about that economy of stroke thing, it made it really great when it was that big and I could just lay in these huge brush strokes to have like the eyeball be, that was a good time. And so I haven't done a lot of that, but I liked it. And then also one year for, I think, the faculty show, I made little teenies because I can get super into being very, very detailed with little itty bitty brushes. And like that also does it for me. So it's kind of a range, but almost all of these that I showed tonight tend to be in that kind of 2 foot, 4 foot, 3 foot, 4 foot kind of size. I don't know why. I don't know if that's sellability, which I don't think it is because I never think about it that way. I think it's ease of making the canvas because I tend to make my own canvases, stretch my own.
That's interesting.
Also the size of my studio, it's just like a bedroom in my house and it's really tiny. So that probably limits me a little bit because I think if I had a bigger space to work, I would really enjoy painting much larger.
Okay. Yeah. I think a lot of people feel that way, but then, it's interesting to hear other artists like I mean, Joan really loves to paint
Mhm.
in that petite size. So yeah, I think it just really is, it depends, you know,
Yeah.
on the subject matter too. Anyway, Kelly, this was terrific, and we had so many great questions. Thank you, everybody, for participating
Yeah, I
in
mean, yeah, yeah, thank
Q&A
everybody
and
because
showing up
it's a
on.
really nice night, and people
Yeah.
have Zoom fatigue, and the fact that you guys would jump on here and listen to me ramble and talk, and Lisa, you're incredible. Bottom of my heart, I love that. Thank you very much for
Oh,
joining.
yeah, of course. Thank you.